Hello everyone, Shinto Bean here with some more Warhammer combat cards. It's the beginning of another season of ranked mode, and there has been a new balance patch which changed the stats of a lot of cards. So in this video I'm just going to talk about some of those changes. I've created a few decks in casual mode, just consisting of those cards that were affected by the balance pass. And so hopefully I can locate the Warlords and we can go through and talk about all of them. So starting off with the Eldari, a few of the infantry got their stats boosted. The Akathist has very low attack power, and it still does even after the buff. It's one that I don't really use very much as regeneration, but I have seen some people use it, I think, in combination with Psykers, just as a lane blocker, and it can also debuff ranged. So there's that thing. The Howling Banshee just got a slight buff. This is another one that I don't really use too much. It's got Fear, and also notable for this season, Shields and Fear are also going to be changed a little bit, the traits. And it hasn't gone live yet. It will be coming very soon, I think, but I will do a separate video on that when it's released. The Dark Reaper Exarch, this thing actually was almost identical to the Corsair with Barrage, but they buffed this guy's attack, so he actually does quite a bit more damage now, which is good to see. There's the Drukhari Incubi. This thing, I think, got a little more health and maybe a little bit more melee attack as well. It's one I don't really use very much. And then the Fire Dragon got a pretty good boost to its attack power. This thing has been buffed a few times, I think, so it hits pretty hard, especially with the Zephyr Blade, so it's a solid card, I think. So, again, a lot of these cards that are getting buffed are ones that were either underperforming in the past or just not very popular. So even post-buff, I don't know if they're all going to be, necessarily the best choice to use, but at least they'll be slightly better than they were in the past. Now moving on to Necrons. Let's see, so we'll just go through the cards that got buffed. The Scarab Swarm does a little bit more damage than before. It's got Endless for its trait. This one I don't really use too much, but 4 points, you can fit it in if you have a few extra points. This guy, one of the first Necrons I think you unlock, the Immortal, got its ranged attack increased a little bit, slightly better, but again, not too amazing. The Cryptothal got a little bit more health and a little more damage as well. This one I use quite a bit just because a low-cost taunt card is quite useful in a lot of situations. We got the Lich Guard. This thing got a bit more melee attack as well. It's pretty solid for 12 points, but again, it does have to compete with a lot of other bodyguards in there, so I think it's just not a hugely popular option. And the Locust Heavy Destroyer, this thing finally got buffed. This thing had way too little health, considering the size of the model in that image, I think. But now, I think it got more health and a little bit more damage, I think, so yeah, it looks pretty good. Again, with the Berserker, with 2 attack types, this is a very powerful card. Alright, let's move on to Tau, who I think I put under this Warlord. Warlord itself did not get changed at all, I'm just have to use it to put all the bodyguards in one place. We got the Stealth Drone. This thing's cost was reduced by 2 points, so it's now the same cost as the Shield Drone. So both of those taunting drones are now 4 points. It's easier to fit them both in. We got the Sting Wing. This thing got a slight buff to its stats, but it's still pretty weak in terms of attack power. And Tau have plenty of scouts. I do sometimes use this one, just for the scout, just for the trait. We've got this guy, the Ethereal with Inspiring Presence. Is another card that I just never use. I think they gave it a little bit more health, but it just doesn't really compete with a lot of the other cards in the Tau roster for me. And then 2 Battlesuits got a pretty good boost to their stats. The Broadside Battlesuit with Big Game Hunter. This thing has been buffed in the past, but now it's dealing quite a bit of damage. 68 attack at level 11 here. So yeah, it starts off with 43 ranged attack now, so this thing deals quite a bit of damage for 20 points. Definitely a solid option. And then the Broadside Battlesuit with Barrage, this thing finally got buffed as well. This thing in the past was actually nerfed by quite a bit, so it wasn't nearly as strong for a long time, but now its power level is back up to a decent level, I think. Alright, moving on to Servants of the Emperor. Now the Servants actually had their most powerful warlord, Greyfax, nerfed by just a little bit. She got, her stats, her health was decreased by, I think, 10, and then her ranged attack decreased by 5 this season. So she does not quite as strong, but still plenty strong, I think. It's not going to be a huge difference for her. And then the bodyguards that got buffed, I think this Commissar just got his health increased by a bit. He can be pretty nice just for a 7-point Inspiring Presence. We've got this guy, the Death Rider. I haven't used this guy in so long, but he got a boost to his melee attack, so he does pretty hard now. Could combo well with the Canoness Viridian, I think. The Primaris Psyker got a slight boost to her stats. I only really use Psychic with Greyfax, and even then I don't actually use the Psychic build for Greyfax these days, but for those people that do, this could be a decent card in that deck. We've got the Sororitas Retributor. She got a slight boost to her ranged attack, and again, with low health, she is actually going to be suffering from the shield nerf once that goes live, because she doesn't have a whole lot of health to start off with. So, not really the best card. And then this guy, Tech Priest Manipulus, which started out as a limited edition card a long time ago, but I think it's been in the general pool now for a little while. Got a little bit of boost to, I think, both its attack and health. It's got regeneration, so I do kind of like this card. I use it sometimes with a ranged build. Alright, moving on to Space Marines. We're going to look over here. I've actually included a few of the Space Marines that got changed in the previous season, because I didn't actually do a video on that, but for this current season, the ones that got buffed were this guy, the Raven Guard, Vanguard Veteran, got a little bit more attack, I think. 9 points, it's one of the cheapest Space Marine bodyguards. This guy is one of the first cards you unlock. I think actually you start off with him when you first start the game, the Primaris Ancient. He had pretty low attack, and I think he got his attack stats boosted by just a little bit, and maybe his health as well, if I'm not mistaken. So, can be, again, useful for a cheap Inspiring Presence. And of course for beginner players who start off with him, and also I think this guy, the Reaver, who unlocks pretty early, they both got a slight boost to their stats, so they can perform a little bit better. Ultramarine is getting a lot of love, apparently. The Suppressor got a boost to his stats, so deals quite a bit of damage now, but I think also they gave it more health as well, so it's kind of an awkward card just having only one attack type, but could do a lot of damage potentially with Tolmaron. And then finally, the Centurion Devastator. This thing got nerfed into oblivion. It was such a terrible card for a really long time. But now they gave it a little bit more health and more damage, finally, so it's able to at least compete a little bit more with some of the other Space Marine Barrage units. And then last season, the Hellblasters got a boost to their ranged attack, so they're actually quite strong now for their cost. And then some of the big cards also got their traits changed. So this Venerable Dreadnought for the Grey Knights used to have Psychic Link, so you had to combo with Psychers, but it got changed. Its trait was changed to Precision Shot, so now you can use it in a lot more decks. I personally liked it with Psychic Link, and I haven't really used it since it got its trait changed. And then also same thing with the Dread Knight. Used to have Big Game Hunter, actually, and it now has Furious Charge, so interesting change there. Alright, moving on, let's go over to Chaos. A couple unpopular bodyguards getting a slight boost to their stats here. We got the Pink Horror, just got a little bit of a boost to all of its attack types, I think. And then the Screamer got a slight boost, but again, it's quite weak. If you're running like a Psychic deck, it can be useful. It's only 4 points, and it buffs Psychic when it readies. But I personally don't actually use it, really. This thing finally got a decent buff to its attack. The Blood Crusher was a very weak card, but they gave it plus 20 attack now. So you can see it starts off with 39 attack. It hits really hard, and it's actually a decent option with Skull Taker now, I think. This Possessed thing got slightly more wounds, I think, a little bit more health. And then the Spoilpox Scrivener of Nurgle. It's one of 2 Nurgle bodyguards with Inspiring Presence. Got a slight boost to its stats, but I don't use this or the Sloppity Biopiper. I think both of them are just overshadowed by a lot of the other Chaos bodyguards. Alright, next up we've got Orcs. So where did I put those Orcs? I think they're with Badruck. So here we go. The Gretchen is now 3 points, making it the cheapest Orc bodyguard, so easier to fit into a deck. We've got Baza the Blade, the Commando, got a slight boost to his stats, I think. Nothing huge, but it just does a little bit more damage. Combos quite well with Snick Rod, of course. We got the Mega Knob. This one will also be affected by the shield nerf, because it doesn't have as much base health, but he does a little bit more damage now this season, I think. And then we've got Orcs now have a lot of very cheap cards with amazing ranged attack. So the Mech Gun got another buff to its stats, 68 ranged attack here at level 11 with Barrage, so that's a lot of damage. The Def Copter also got its attack increased as well. So I want to say that with Bad Ruck, it's actually maybe better to use a lot of these cheaper ranged units than the more expensive ranged vehicles. Except for the old Daka Jet, of course, that one. It's a no-brainer with Bad Ruck. Alright, and then finally, we've got Tyranid. So 2 of the Tyranid Warlords actually got a slight nerf. The Hive Tyrant got all of its attack types reduced by just 2, so it's not a big nerf or anything. I was kind of surprised by that, but because I didn't think this was a very competitive Warlord, but I guess it has been performing pretty well, and it is actually quite good for beginner players, especially, I think. And then the Swarm Lord, it's got shields, of course, so it's not going to be affected too much by the shield nerf because it has such high base health, but they decreased its health. In this season, it has 40 less health than before, which is a pretty big hit to its health. I was surprised by that, again, because the Swarm Lord, I don't use the Swarm Lord at all because maybe I just don't know how to use him, because I can't do very well with him, even at this level. So I was a bit surprised by that nerf there, but we'll see. Some of the weaker Tyranid bodyguards did get a slight boost to their stats. We got some of these melee scouts, like the hybrid. This thing still barely does any damage, so not an amazing card, but it is only 4 points for scout. And then the other scout over here, the Jackal, this guy got a boost to his melee attack finally, so he does 10 more melee than he did before, so slightly better. Okay with Gosar, I guess. This guy finally got a boost to his ranged attack. He was just so underpowered. He's still not amazing, but I think he does 10 more ranged than before now, so definitely better than in the past. You can see I have 90 copies of him, and I've only upgraded him to level 2. I don't know if I'm going to use him, even after the buff here. The Gene Stealer over here got a pretty big boost to its melee attack. It's got Endless. Yeah, in the past it was actually pretty much identical to the Hormigaunt. Now it has a fair bit more melee. And then finally the Zone Throat got a slight boost, I think, to its stats. It now starts off with a melee attack. In the past it actually did not have a melee attack until level 7, but now it starts off with 2. So just a slight boost right there. So that is it for all of the changes that I know of for this season. Nothing too massive, really, but again, it does encourage you to maybe change up some of the bodyguards that you're using. So let me know what you think of any of the changes here, and keep an eye out for the big Shield and Fear change. I will be doing a separate video on that when it's released. That's it for this one. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.